Hi, I'm Simon Isaacs and I lead the commercial and industrial print division at Ricoh UK, and this is our Anything in Print podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We are really glad to have you here because this business podcast series is designed specifically for you, the print community. This show is about bringing you the latest advice, tips and strategies from our network of experts within the print and related industries like marketing, business and finance. It's all about knowledge sharing to help you and your organisations reach your purpose and fulfil your business goals. But before we dive in, remember you can find all of our education video content on our Ricoh Anything in Print series page. Now, let's begin. In an increasingly online world, printed and digital complement each other, and we're not here today to argue if one will or should replace the other. Believe it or not, most people, the most normal people that is, go about their days without analysing which printed materials are adding value to a product, a service or a campaign and their impact on them. But it is everywhere and it does work. As well as communicating information or advertising, our customers are diversifying and needing paper that can be used to decorate our homes with wallpaper, photos and art. More and more of the products we buy are innovatively packaged in paper, and we don't even notice that it's used on the laminate floors that we're walking on. So print is physical. We live in a physical world. Until our brains are uploaded to the cloud, there will always be the need for physical media. We like to touch, taste, smell, feel things, and print does them all. Print can be temporary, like a newspaper, or permanent, like art. And while the shape of the UK printing industry is always changing, the rate and the extent of change is different for different sectors. Declines in some sectors and others which continue to climb. So what I'm really interested to gain from today's session is what part can paper play in all of this? Paper manufacturers are a critical link in the print industry supply chain and have been busy transforming their production lines to meet market demands, directing capacity towards corrugated and other packaging papers, higher value and specialty papers, all led by a mix of consumer demand, print technology, quality, the environment, and of course price. So I thought it'd be fantastic to hear a paper manufacturer's point of view on the market dynamics and how they affect every print service provider in the UK. I'd like to welcome Jim Whittington, Channel Sales Manager for the UK, Ireland and North America at Mondi Group. Quite a big territory there. So Jim, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit about you, your background and what's happening in the world of paper.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for letting me to join this discussion today. I guess, maybe a little bit of background as to where I've been and what I've been doing in the past. And I'm a bit of a paper geek, so this kind of thing is perfect for me. I love talking about paper and print. I joined straight from university in the 90s, end of the 90s, and I started at a paper mill manufacturing newsprint. So down and dirty Associated newspapers and the Times and the Telegraph, and making sure there was enough newsprint coming over to keep those titles printed every day, and then joined into coated papers for a company called HH Peg, and we covered a lot of different angles there. So working on book papers, coated papers, uncoated papers, copier paper. So there was a myriad of products there. I found myself drawn to the more premium coated papers in the days when premium coated paper existed. Sadly, not anymore. And in those days, we would spend a lot of time working with the distributors in the UK, the paper merchants and their teams that looked after creative agencies and brands. It fascinated me, and I ended up moving from the mill to a paper merchant to work in what they call back selling, which is a horrible word, but really it's getting specifications on paper, speaking to the people that would specify to a printer what kind of material they want to use. So I worked in that for a paper merchant called McNaughton Papers, no longer around, but they merged into a company called Antalis, who I was with until about 18 months ago. And whilst I was doing that role, I became increasingly interested in digital print, which was growing and was new, and designers were beginning to understand a little bit about it, but there was a real thirst for knowledge, and I enjoyed understanding it and imparting that knowledge onto the creative industry. Joined the digital team, a new digital team at Antalis, and ended up running the digital sales team at Antalis until beginning of March last year, 2020, when I decided to make a jump back to the paper mill, back to manufacturing, as a bit of a challenge to kind of get back into that world, and to also to understand a completely new market. You mentioned the territories earlier on. You know, the North American part of the job role was an interesting part for me. I know nothing about that, and I've had to learn a lot about global freight and shipping over the last few months. So terrible time to join a business, but actually I'm a big believer in the easiest way to learn is to just throw yourself into things. So that's a little bit of my background, and as I mentioned, I had a lot to do with different OEMs when I was in my digital role, and we talked about print service providers and them investing in new machinery and new technology a lot. And I was always very keen to put my hand up and say, there's another factor here. It's not just about that nice looking bit of tin. It's not just about the digital front end. It's not about the finishing kit. There's this thing called material or paper or plastics or whatever it might be. And without that, none of the other bits work. It's something that has to happen in conjunction. I ended up talking a lot about how material could really help in various different ways, which I'm sure we'll go into over the course of this chat. But looking at just new ideas, looking at efficiencies, looking at costs, looking at supply chain, the whole lot. It's an important factor, and they all have to work together to create what the customer wants, which they don't even see as print. They just see it as a physical piece of marketing material or whatever, or packaging or whatever it might be. So we used to talk a lot about that, and I always used to say we have the same sort of common goal. We're looking to create clicks on machines. We're looking to create busy print machines, because busy print machines equal busy and successful companies. So I think it's nothing is particularly successful without all the constituent parts being considered, and material is one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, because the only time I got involved with paper before, sort of when we used to sell the continuous feed and the cut sheet presses before inkjet came out, there was usually a bit of an argument. If the machine broke, engineers had a bad habit of blaming the paper or the way it was conditioned. And then all of a sudden, with inkjet about 15 years ago, the paper made such a massive difference. Whereas with toner-based, melting the toner onto the page, it was less important. It was less of a factor. So you talk about the investment in the big shiny machines. I think probably 15 years ago, that really opened my eyes to the importance and the technology within the paper, and how that made such a massive difference. As you said, not just on the quality, but the productivity, the throughput, the ability of the engines to perform.
Yeah. No, it's really important. And there used to be, or I used to feel like we were in a bit of a battle with the engineers, Rico engineers and other OEM engineers, and that wasn't a really healthy place to be, because, as I said, we all have this common goal, which is an efficiently running machine clicking through. So I do think maybe inkjet's helped in that respect, where the paper manufacturers, the distributors, and the equipment manufacturers are all working together to try and find a solution for the print service provider, whatever they might be doing with it. Maybe that's had a knock-on effect with the toner devices as well. But I think there is a desire to try and work harder. I know equipment manufacturers would prefer a machine that can run any paper, but the reality of the fact is those equipment machines, those toner machines in particular, are very hot, and paper is made at the very early stages of a paper machine. If you've ever been to see one, it's 1% pulp, 99% water. There's a lot of water in paper, and if you've got hot machines, the moisture content is going to make a difference to how it performs on a press. So I think it is really important to work together to make it as efficient as possible. And also, maybe in a world where we commoditize in every single part of the of industry, understanding that you can commoditize and you can purchase very cheaply, but are we really doing the best for our business? We might have to call an engineer out twice a week, twice a month, because we're saving pennies on a material to run on your machine, when in fact for less than a couple of lunches during the week you can have trouble-free running. So I think it's important to choose the right material and not always to be seduced by just looking at the cheapest. And I think we went that way, and then people started understanding problems with dust in machines. People started finding issues where maybe even coating was melting off and building up in parts of the machine, so you'd have to replace certain bits of a machine on a regular basis. And I hope that we kind of bounced back from that dive down to the cheapest possible material, and we realized that having something cut well and manufactured well can just simply make your business far more efficient.
Absolutely. And as you said, getting 10-20% more out of 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, however many print assets you have on the floor, with all the labor and the power and the premises associated with it, it does seem often like a false economy when you've got dust blocking sensors, blocking print heads. Even if the customer isn't particularly interested about the quality of the page, that they are very interested in the overall cost of the page and the productivity of the page.
Yeah, I think web to print and inkjet again has helped in these conversations, because we've gone from perhaps being in a situation where a job comes into a printer and they run it. They've got plenty of time to kind of make it work, and if it's not quite right, they'll run a bit more, create another plate, go again. That doesn't happen with web to print. That job is being, the order comes in, it sits on the digital front end, and it needs to be out, finished, and dispatched in the same hour, I guess, in some cases. So, we don't have the time to explore how to make something work. We just need something to do its job, and to do it successfully. And many a conversation I've had with people to say, look, yes, this material might be a little bit more expensive than this material, but this is running efficiently. It's creating exactly what you need it to do. The output is great, it looks great, but most importantly, it just runs. And when you're running a web to print business, I think, or print on demand or inkjet, then it's got to just go.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So it's an really important factor. I think people understand it a bit more now. And the paper industry is an enormous industry. It goes under the radar completely. I mean, in any other industry, if you saw some of the mills that have gone under, sadly, over the last decade, and some of the paper distributors, this would be big news in a normal industry. But because it's the paper trade, it goes under the radar. But of course, as you mentioned earlier on, you can't look around. No, I challenge anybody to look around right now, wherever they're listening to this podcast, and not see print. They will be seeing it, whether they know it. I mean, there'll be plenty of labels sat inside their laptop or inside their phone. There'll be wallpaper that is paper-based. What they're probably not understanding either as well, because we're talking very much to sort of commercial print material here, but packaging and personal hygiene masks, or your masks may be paper-based. Your wipes that you're using to clean your hands are paper-based. And of course, what everyone has seen over the last 18 months is an abundance of deliveries to the house from whatever store it might be online, and that is all paper-based as well. So we're talking maybe more about commercial print and office print here, but of course, from a paper mill point of view, we see it as anything fiber-based. And the fiber-based industry is really booming, and it feels kind of strange because demand in commercial print has flattened very much over the last 18 months. But demand for fiber and for pulp is going through the roof, because not only are we seeing more packaging, but but people are trying to move from a plastic society. They're looking for new alternatives for plastics and creating fiber-based products. And it's something that Mondi do very well. We have a very big uncoated fine paper division, which I work for, but we have 3 other divisions that are all involved in packaging. And those businesses are busy, very busy right now. So yeah, we've seen fiber-based products being used in bags, food, as I said, clothing and shoes. Paper is used in manufacturing those kind of things, and personal healthcare. It's a big industry, and I think one of the important things for me looking at paper at the moment and paper mills is, what we're seeing is with a sort of slow shift, a decline in general prints. We hit 2007 numbers were probably the biggest they've ever been, and we've kind of flattened a little bit from that year onwards in terms of paper mills manufacturing paper for print. And of course, paper mills are reevaluating what they need to do with these big beasts, these big machines. So we're seeing a transformation now where paper mills are reinvesting in technology or machinery in order to move away from perhaps producing copier paper or commercial print paper, and moving into those areas of personal hygiene and packaging and specialist material. It's an immensely costly thing to do, to repurpose a paper machine. We're talking millions, if not billions of euros here. But it's happening, and it's happening right now. And we've seen in the news, even in the last few weeks, of paper mills deciding to either shut up shop or to repurpose machines, and this will continue into the future. Paper mills looking for more lucrative, profitable channels, and there's lots out there. I see in the US, we've seen 1 million tons of volume of uncoated fine paper volume disappear in the last 12 months. 1 million tons is a lot, and we're seeing it happen here as well. So building that back into sort of commercial print, supply chain is very important. In a few years ago, you could get paper very easily from wherever you wanted, but it's becoming a little bit more difficult now, and I think that will continue, based on the fact that the money is much more difficult. It's much more difficult to be very successful and to create great margins in paper, and it's maybe much easier in packaging and other parts of the industry. So we've seen that it affects the commodity end maybe first, where there's less margin, but it will have an impact all the way through the segments that we have in paper. And I think the areas of growth for me in paper, in uncoated paper, particularly where we are, I see more technical products. So we've talked about inkjet a lot. I see inkjet continuing to grow, and we know that, in terms of machinery, that's still a growth area. I still see digital as a very important part of the industry, and manufacturing papers specifically to run on digital presses, I think, is still a great area of growth. So, we're still, as Mondi, we're still here. We're still looking to grow over this period, but it's going to be a big change in the next, well, it's already started, and it will continue to take place over the next few years.
Yeah. So when you see people coming to buy paper, you talk about it being a commodity, and often the person that is seeing the effects of it just passes a specification, and someone else in the organisation would come and buy it. What are you seeing the sort of the overlap, the Venn diagram, if you like, of the requirements in terms of? We talked about productivity and making sure you can get the maximum through the factory. We've talked, a little bit about environmental factors as well, and what we're using it for. And I guess that's becoming more and more important now in terms of the focus of some of these large organisations. And then there's the quality of what they produce as well. What are you seeing as the key requirements, and how are they changing over the past year or so the viewers can look and think, well, where do I need to be building capability? What should I be talking about?
Yeah, well, I think understanding what's available is a hugely important part of what we as a mill have to do, and what our distributors in merchants or resellers have to do, because I think now more than any time is the time to be evolving and adapting as a print service provider. I heard someone talk in the US last week a K-shaped recovery, which I'd not heard before, but it makes a lot of sense to me, because what we're seeing is some businesses really fly out the back of this process where they have evolved and adapted. But we are sadly seeing some other businesses who don't want to, but probably actually, to be fair, find it very difficult to adapt or evolve. You know, and they're obviously on that bottom K. So we're seeing that, and I think evolving and adapting is really important. I think paper can be an important part of that. There are a multitude of materials that will run on your standard digital toner machine now, more than most people would imagine. Pretty much everything that you can run on a litho machine, traditional litho machine, you can run on digital technology now. And you know, I think it's really important that paper mills and paper merchants and distributors really get out to print service providers, work with OEMs, and talk to people and say, look, you know, you can go down this route. You can be manufacturing these kind of things, and whether that's jumping into web to print or gifting, whether it's looking at inkjet, you know, and it's a big jump to move to inkjet reels, but of course inkjet sheet fed is an important factor there as well. So trying to find the right material. You mentioned sustainability. I think before lockdown, the world was becoming more tuned into sustainability and being more sustainable. There are still some disbelievers in global warming, but in general, I think it's very well accepted now. Green Planet, Blue Planet really made a difference there. And I think there was a real belief, a real desire to change from Joe Blogg's public, let alone businesses. And the last 12 or 18 months has only really reinforced that. We're really trying to be better at what we do. And sustainability is a hugely important part of paper manufacturing. It's an energy resource heavy industry. But paper mills have always been very good at looking at sustainability. They were a big target decades ago from the NGOs, because, you know, as I said earlier on, they use a lot of water. They're always on a river. They use a lot of energy, and of course they cut down trees. You know, now the paper mills, all paper mills, I'm not going to sort of pinpoint anybody here. All paper mills are so good at looking at forestry now, whether we're looking at accreditations like FSC or PFC, but just making sure that we're really looking after our eco landscape. So sustainability really strong. Looking at CO2's become a huge factor now. Some of the products that are available on the market are CO2 neutral as a matter of course, and that's very big. I know some of the distributors in the UK particularly like to look at CO2, and of course, you know, it's something that I think Joe Bloggs again at home understands. CO2, it's understandable. So when they see something as a CO2 neutral print job, it's quite important as well. So sustainability is huge, but for me, looking at new avenues, trying to find a product that can run on your machine, trying to completely change what you were doing. If you were just a local commercial printer, that's great. You can still be a local commercial printer, but perhaps looking for something in a specific industry where you can find a product that works and that you can generate really nice margins on, as well as doing the more commoditized sort of commercial print work.
Yeah, and we've totally seen that with the factory and as you know, we've got the European facility for testing papers and profiling them on our machines, and we work closely with you guys. And we almost moved away from selling paper to customers because it was just so commoditized. The inventory risk of a customer buying so much paper wasn't really worth the margins that we could make on it. But then in the last 2 years, and I guess with our e-shop and the fact that the papers have been accredited and tested with you guys and at Telford, and these speciality papers, when customers are looking to have an effect or buy something they know will work with that effect, we've seen demand, really rocket. I think that there's hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of orders coming through for these speciality papers from customers who just want to know what effect can they get and what quality and will it work, and to have that ability to do it is definitely showing us the innovation that's out there of customers looking for the opportunities.
Yeah, no, I think you can kind of see some really good examples of that in the photo media world, which kind of maybe hooked onto all this earlier than a lot of other people, but just taking a photo material, a photo paper, it's very expensive compared to a commoditized bog standard paper, hugely more expensive. But break it down into what it needs to do for the printer to get it guaranteed to run on your machines, having gone through the testing facility. So it is a certified material to run on your machine. You've got support from the engineers then if it does go wrong, but hopefully it's not going wrong because it's the exact right product for you. And actually the gift that you're selling at the end, whether it is a photo book or whether it is a keyring or whatever it might be, or a tile on a wall, that's going to be sold for a much bigger sum than that small chunk of material really costs. So yeah, we've seen people do that, and actually where I see value added materials being used more and more is in people that have really understood what they're doing, and they've found a niche and they've really buried themselves in there and created the right software and found the right printing equipment, and the right finishing equipment, of course, and the right material to run there. I mean, another area which is not something that we're hugely involved in, but t-shirt printing. I've seen some machines, and I think you guys have got some as well. These bits of kit are not very big. They can go in, they can complement something you're doing as a commercial print operation. And it can provide a really nice regular revenue stream at quite good margins. And it's not hard, but you've got to get you have to know what you're doing, and you have to find the right bit of kit and the right material, crucially, to run on that kit.
Yeah, just one point there. We do make the only t-shirt printers. There are no other vendors.
In the interest of neutrality, yeah. But yeah, I've seen yours down in Telford and in Staines, and yeah, it's a great bit of kit. And I'm always surprised at how small they are. It's like a office printer, really, isn't it?
Yeah, they are very compact for what they do. So, I mean, from a paper manufacturer's perspective, you'll touch all marketplaces. Well, you mentioned loads that our customers won't be involved with in terms of what the fibers are used for. But can you share some of your insights on where the growth is, where you might see maybe people moving from and to? So where are they diversifying to capture this value?
Well, we talked about gifting. We talked about inkjet and direct mail. I also wonder. We talked earlier on about mills making the decision, quite a costly decision, to repurpose and do something completely different. That's an example of manufacturing adapting and evolving. I do wonder whether commercial printers we need to start looking at this enormous packaging world and really understanding and thinking, how can we go in there? It's not just a case of, can I run something a little bit thicker on my machine? It's taking a view to say, how can we enter this packaging world, because it's not going to go away, and packaging, whilst we see a lot of it, majority of what I see these days is tremendously sustainable. There's not a lot of plastic involved anymore, and we can recycle materials 5 or 6 times before it becomes difficult to recycle it any further. So eminently sustainable. So packaging, I think, is an area that commercial print really needs to start thinking, yeah, let's have a look at that now. It won't be right for everyone, but we can look there. That's really interesting. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of people selling online. Some stats I saw, I think, from Amazon were about moving from 17% online sales to sort of 38% over the last 18 months, which is huge, and that's not going to return. People are not going to go back and start purchasing off the high street or in the ways they used to. They're going to continue to purchase online. So understanding how you can take a product online and gain margins by selling it through that channel, which again requires a few things to happen, I think. And you can't just find yourself a new bit of kit and a new material and say, right, we're going to go and open up a channel online and create a personalized book for someone. You've got to understand who that customer is. You've really got to understand how to take it to market, and that might mean, when you're evolving and adapting and purchasing new equipment and new materials, you also need to be looking at maybe bringing in some data people, bringing in some marketing people. Maybe if you're a big organization, purchasing a small marketing company that understands data. These are the things as well that I think are really important, not necessarily material based, but to adapt and evolve. It's not just a case of the machinery, the print technology, and the material. It's really the mindset of what we're trying to do. So yeah, inkjet, huge for me at the moment. We make a lot of inkjet material, and we're seeing that grow strongly for us. And that's changed from just being sort of transactional material that you could really look at and say, it's just, yeah, okay, I understand why they're using this because it looks a bit naff. Now you can take a look at an inkjet print, and it'd be difficult to understand that it actually is an inkjet printed material. So we're seeing that world. Personalization, I think, really key as well, and web to print, huge areas. And then some sort of more technical sales. So we're looking at producing thicker papers, thinner papers, to really test the abilities of the machinery you guys make. And that allows people to get into some more specialist areas, whether it's pharmaceutical printing or whether, again, maybe moving into packaging, and looking at new sources of fiber for paper as well. Not just taking pulp, but looking at fibers from different crops or different sources. Those are interesting as well. So yeah, I mean, it's really a case of having a desire to change, I think, more than anything else.
Absolutely, and some great points, and it just shows what's happening and why we're doing this talk, but why people need to come and see what's possible, so they can go back to their customers and look at what they're trying to achieve with their business, combine it with what they've learned or what they know about what can be done, and then go back with new ideas. Just to wrap up, have you got any other tips on how to create business efficiencies when it comes to paper?
Well, I mean, I think I think we've kind of gone through some of them, but as a summary, I like the fact, and maybe I've made it up just because it's convenient for me, but I think it's true. I like the fact that this dive down to the cheapest possible product to run on your machine has reversed a little bit. So I think the first thing that we should be doing is we should be choosing a material that does what you need it to do. Not that it's the cheapest material, it does what you need it to do. We want that print machine running as efficiently as possible. So I think selecting the right material in order to get the best efficiency out of the machine is hugely important. I think nowadays there is no excuse to not then factor in sustainability at that stage. Sustainability shouldn't be something that you factor everything else into and then throw sustainability in at the end. Can we make it sustainable? Get it right in there at the beginning. So you need to select the right material to create the printed piece that you want, and that has to work with the machinery. But then look straight into sustainability. We should be choosing only paper from sustainable sources. That's a given. No one should be looking at anything else other than that. We should be looking at the carbon. It is very easy now to speak to any paper manufacturer and ask to see all of the statistics and all of the data on the energy that's being used and the emissions into the air and into the water. We can get that kind of data, and we've been asked for it now at Mondi, and we're very strong in that world. So I think that's very important as well. And then just to make sure, educate yourself if you're not being educated. And as I said, it's our job and our distributors' job to make sure print service providers are educated. But if you're not being educated, go out there and ask some questions, get online, because there is a whole world of different products that you could run on your machine that you just simply have no idea you can. And so to try and change and adapt and evolve, it's an easy thing to do, isn't it? I want to be on the top part of this K recovery. Easy to say, not easy to do. But if we can actually identify, well, I've got this machine, it's not running 24 hours a day. I don't know many digital machines that run 24 hours a day. So in the half hour, let's grab some material, let's test it out, let's see what we can do with it. And you may be able to find, or your print service providers may be able to find ways to do things with our materials that we haven't even identified yet. But certainly we can help with that as well. We've got some great experience from all around the globe of people using different products, whether they're thin, whether they're thick, whether they're recycled products. whether they're digitally superior and premium products. We've got lots of ideas, but we're always looking to hear more ideas, new ideas, because it's in the end the print service provider and sometimes the brand itself who is pushing the print service provider to come up with something new. So I think my tip is really is create the efficiencies first, make sure it works, bring sustainability into it, and then look around, look at all the other things you can do with that machine, because there's always time to try and do something new.
Absolutely, and you look at the investment that goes in, and this is where I'd really encourage people to engage, because it's a barrier to entry for a lot of people. But as you say, they've got the machines, they've often got spare capacity. If they can put those ideas together, the biggest barrier to entry for a lot of startups and small companies is that capital investment that these guys have already made. So thanks very much, Jim. I mean, if I was to summarize, I think we can see that online is going to keep accelerating, but we all love the physical stuff, and usually this digitization, whether it's online purchasing, it drives the right kind of prints. Our customers, they need to diversify and create new value for their end customers, the viewers' end customers, to really focus on increasing productivity. And of course, they can save the planet with your new sustainable fibers as well, which, what better thing to do when you come to work?
I wouldn't say should be saving the planet. Yeah. Let's put the responsibility onto them, go out and make it happen.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Jim. That was great.
No problems. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That's a wrap for today. Thanks for listening. I hope you found this episode informative. If so, make sure you subscribe to all of our upcoming episodes and let us know any feedback you may have. You can also connect with myself and my guests on our Anything in Print series page.